Welcome back, everybody. Over the past 6 months, the market has been up almost 25% in total return. And in other cases, you have companies like Meta that have been up over 60% and Nvidia that's been up over 120%. And this has some SCHD investors questioning their life choices.
You suck.
And just recently, SCHD had its annual reconstitution, and popular companies like Broadcom and ADP were removed from the index. And originally, I was going to walk through the reconstitution changes in this video, but there's so many videos on YouTube that are doing that already. You guys can easily go watch those. In this video, we're going to focus on what it actually means and why people are starting to question it. And more importantly, I'm going to address this question that I've received from multiple people. Is SCHD still worth it? And now the short answer is yes, assuming that it aligns with your goals and expectations, but we're going to get into all that. So in this video, we're going to talk about why people are questioning SCHD and its performance, SCHD's reconstitution and methodology, and what that means in terms of our own expectations, and how we can decide for ourselves if SCHD is the right investment for us. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, in the grand scheme of things, SCHD hasn't performed poorly at all. Like, while the market has been up almost 25% over the past 6 months, SCHD's been up over 17%, which is absolutely respectable. But the issue is that when we see the general market go up day after day, or specific companies or ETFs go up day after day, and they're going up faster than our own portfolio, we tend to question a bit what's going on. But the question we need to ask ourselves is SCHD an ETF that we should expect to beat the broader market on a regular basis? And in general, I would say no, but we're going to get to all that in a minute. Because the reason why people are questioning SCHD's performance, in my opinion, is because of one of 3 different scenarios. 1, they're newer investors who started out with a dividend focus. 2, they're investors thinking the market would be more like 2022 again. And number 3, in general, they're investors who haven't defined their goals and strategy yet. And we'll go through each one real quick. So in terms of newer investors who started out with a dividend focus, a lot of times when we're relatively new to something, we attach ourselves to the ideas that make sense to us early on. And dividend investing is definitely one of those things. And I've even talked about it on my channel before about how starting out with dividend paying companies and focusing on just being able to pay one of your monthly bills with it is a great way to start. And I still believe that, because at that point in time, it's important to understand the value of investing, and being able to see your money work for you to pay off a tangible bill is one great way to do that. And for some folks, having that focus on dividends is something that they just prefer, and even as they learn more, they stick with it. But once we start doing something on a consistent basis, we start learning more. We start understanding other ideas, and we see how the rest of the market is performing. And sometimes we start to question if our original plan is really the right plan for us. And I think this is probably happening to some SCHD investors out there, especially if they're ones who started in 2022. Because that was when SCHD was negative but still handily outpacing the broader market. Which brings me to my second scenario. Investors thinking that the market would be similar to 2022. And I remember talking about SCHD in 2022 and how if you looked at its performance since inception, which was on October 20th, 2011, up until the end of 2022, it had actually outpaced the S&P 500 in total return, which is an amazing accomplishment considering what big tech and growth stocks did in 2021. And I think there was a lot of people who got started investing during that time, or maybe who got started with dividends during that time, that saw that and just kind of expected that that's what would happen going forward. But if we look at the history, we can see that they were pretty close for a good period of time, until about 2018 and beyond, which I think we can agree has been mostly dominated by big tech firms, low to zero interest rates, and an overall preference for growth over value. And that's ultimately what SCHD is. It's large cap value companies. But the one exception to that in the market recently was 2022, when tech and growth stocks tanked, and even though SCHD was negative in total return in 2022, it far outpaced the broader market, which brought its total return since inception above the S&P 500 for that overall time period. Now, is that what we should really expect going forward? And does SCHD beating the market even matter or make sense? Which brings me to the third scenario, which is just not having defined our goals and strategy yet. And this is a pretty normal thing that I've dealt with a lot in my own experience. Like, you buy a company because you think it's a good company. Like, for me, that company was Verizon, which I bought multiple times over the years. And if you've watched my old Verizon video, I talked about it in there about how when I bought it, my thinking was, here's a company that people use every day. People's phone bill is critical to them, like they're never going to give that up. It pays a strong dividend with a good yield, and if you look at the valuation numbers, it looks really attractive, so this must be a good investment. And then you watch the market go up, and Verizon does nothing, and you're like, what is going on? And believe it or not, Verizon can actually be a very good investment depending on what your goals are and where you're at in your investing timeline. Let me show you what I mean. If you're 25 years old and you have 30 years or so till retirement, and you're not worried about building an income stream to use right now, then Verizon makes no sense for you because of this chart alone. And this is only 10 years worth of returns. It's worse at 30. At 30 years, you're missing out on 10x your money over that time span. That's not something you want to do. But on the other hand, if you're 60 and about to be in retirement, you have a portfolio of stocks, ETFs, and bonds that focus on providing you income that you're actually going to be using in retirement, then Verizon makes a lot of sense in that scenario. It's a stable company, they're an important company, they pay a good dividend, and they're not trying to beat the market. It's just something that is going to continue to pay you. And that's really the whole point. Not every investment is meant to act the same way or to compete against each other. So for the SCHD investors, the question is simply, does SCHD make sense with what my investment goals are? Because the reality is that SCHD is doing exactly what it's meant to do. And let's talk about that for a bit. And we can go ahead and start with the reconstitution that just happened. Now, obviously they do this every year. They base it off the Dow Jones Dividend 100 Index, and we've talked about what that methodology is before. So with SCHD, it's U.S. equities, no REITs, with a minimum of 10 consecutive years of dividend payments that are in the top 50% of dividend yield. And then the top 100 are selected based on a composite score consisting of the following quality criteria: free cash flow to debt ratio, return on equity, dividend yield, and 5-year dividend growth rate. If I had to sum up this methodology, I would say it's focused on high-yielding dividend payers that have the best combination of free cash flow to debt, return on equity, yield, and 5-year dividend growth rate. So every year they reevaluate that mix of stocks in the index, and changes are made based on what's happened over the past year. And if we just look at the major one that everyone's talking about this year, Broadcom, they've actually doubled over the past year, meaning that 1.55% dividend yield was closer to 3% before, which would have put it in the top half of dividend yielding companies. But now it's not, so they don't make the cut. Now, do I personally love the changes that were made in this year's reconstitution? Well, no, but then my strategy and goals are a little bit different. I have a goal to actually beat the S&P 500. And I don't think the mega caps and Mag 7 are overvalued, and I'm not transitioning to value in general. I've actually been doing the opposite. I just cut Hershey out of my portfolio because of growth concerns, but SCHD's index just added Hershey due to the attractive valuation. So SCHD is doing exactly what it's designed to do. Like, we shouldn't be surprised by this, because when we buy ETFs, we're not buying the companies that it holds, we're buying the methodology that it uses. So while I personally would have preferred that Broadcom stay because it's a company doing very well, SCHD is doing exactly what it's designed to do, and it's up to us as investors to figure out if what they're doing aligns with what our actual goals are. And for me, I actually just trimmed SCHD a little more last week, so now it's only about 5% of my portfolio. And at that low allocation, I like it as a small balance of value and dividends to the rest of my portfolio, which is a little more aggressive. So what do we actually do about this? Now, to go back to the original question, is SCHD worth it in 2024? The answer is, of course it is. We just have to make sure that our goals and expectations match up with what SCHD is designed to do. If you're an investor who wants to focus on dividend income from high-quality companies above all else, SCHD is great. If you're an investor who doesn't handle wild up and down swings in the market but still wants some exposure to stocks, a quality dividend ETF like SCHD might make a lot of sense. If you're getting close to retirement and are building a portfolio that will provide you stable income to live off of, SCHD is probably a good choice as part of that plan. See, we have to start looking at ETFs like tools. They can all be great depending on the situation. It just depends on what job you're trying to get done. And you can't really compare them. Like, a hammer's a great tool, but a screwdriver is as well. but at different jobs. So if your expectation is to beat the S&P 500 and keep up with all the semiconductor stocks on a daily basis, SCHD is not going to be the right fit and probably not the right tool. So you shouldn't expect it to be able to get that job done for you. The reality for all of us as investors is we need to define what our goals are that make sense for our own personal situation, and then find the investments or tools to be able to help get the job done. So really the question comes down to, what are we trying to accomplish and how does SCHD fit or not fit into that plan? So what do you guys think about SCHD's recent performance and the reconstitution? Let me know down in the comments below. Now, if you want to see how SCHD matched up against 2 other popular dividend growth ETFs, click on this video right here. Hope you guys have a great day out there. Financial independence is true freedom, so keep building and stacking wins, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.